Should I be doing the roll call and stuff now first or after the meeting? I'll do that now. Welcome everybody to the Skippack Township Board of Supervisors meeting, last one of the year. Hope everyone has a happy, safe holiday. And if you join me with Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Franco is not here this evening. I am here. Janine.
I'm here.
Nick Fountain here. Ben Webb, present. Chris Laniak.
Here.
Barry Miller. Tim Woodrow.
I'm here.
Joe Zadlow.
Here.
Joe Clement, virtual presence.
Virtually here.
All right. Take it away, Joe or Chris?
Joe.
Joe, it's all you. What's our first hearing tonight?
Great, thank you very much. We have two hearings this evening. One is a conditional use hearing related to Marino Holdings application for 4446 Skippack Pike. And then the other is related to the adoption or potential adoption of a zoning ordinance. We'll take them in that order. And just, if you'll bear with me for a moment, I'll kind of introduce what a conditional use hearing is, what the applicant has to do, and then what the public's role is as far as the hearing is concerned. Unfortunately, I can't be with you there this evening. I wish I could, but the conditions are what they are, and I'm quarantined. The applicant is Mr. Marino. He's the applicant's representative. Mr. Marino, I think you also have Luke Camp with you. Is that correct?
I don't.
Okay. And what we have to do this evening is take action, the board has to take action on a conditional use application of Marino Holdings, who is the equitable owner of the property at 4446 Skippack Pike. The applicant, and what a conditional use is it's a use that is essentially permitted by right. But the board has the opportunity through this hearing to put some reasonable conditions on the proposed use. And you'll notice I said reasonable because things that are permitted by conditional use, we anticipate some of the impact that they would have on the community. For example, for a school, if that were permitted by conditional use, you would expect to have bus traffic and traffic during certain times of the day related to students. In this case, Mr. Marino is proposing to have a 8-unit townhome development at the subject property. And so in this case, we would expect there would be some traffic, some impact on the public at large. The applicant is a party to the hearing, and there is an opportunity for other folks to become parties to the hearing if they have party status. And the public will have an opportunity to comment at the end of the hearing after the applicant has presented his case. But if you would like party status, that affords certain rights and responsibility. Is there anybody in the audience that would like party status, Chris?
I see no one raising their hand to be party to the hearing.
Great. All right, wonderful. Then I won't get any further into detail on what that is, but suffice it to say that the applicant here has the burden of proof in moving forward with their own, presenting their own evidence and testimony. Because this is a little different than unusual with me being remote, I am going to ask a number of yes and no questions of the applicant to try and move things along quickly. So with that said, I would like to have certain records moved into the record for us as exhibits. So Chris, if you could help me with this, number one would be the conditional use application received on September 23rd, 2021. That would be D1. Second is the zoning exhibit plan prepared by Crossroads Group. I believe that's dated September 20, 2021. We'll mark that as B2.
Can we have those in our binder?
Yeah, these are yours.
Thank you.
Yes,
Yep.
you do,
Gotcha.
Mr.
Yeah,
Fox.
that's fine.
Thank you.
B3 will be the email indicating the notice of publication, that the notice was published, rather, on November 27 and November 30 in the Times Herald. That's B3. B4 is a letter prepared by Woodrow and Associates dated October 25th, 2021. B5 is a letter prepared by Joseph A. Zadlow, dated October 25th, 2021. And B6 is a CV of Luke Camp that we received this afternoon. Chris, are we good with those exhibits?
Yes.
Excellent. I think at this time it would be appropriate then for Mr. Marino and his witness to be sworn in and come to the table if they could. So why don't we do that quickly?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, sit at the table real quick so I can see you a little better.
You see both of us, Joe?
Yeah, I got you. Thank you. All right, and Luke, we're just going to go through a little bit of your background just to qualify you as an expert here. I understand that you have provided some presentations to planning commissions in the past. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that you are a registered engineer with the state of Pennsylvania. Is that correct as well?
No, it is not.
I'm sorry, Luke, I didn't hear you.
No, it's not correct. I'm an engineer in training. I'm not a professional engineer.
Yeah, you're an yes. Okay. So could you just clarify that for me again one more time?
I'm an engineer in training, not a professional engineer.
Understood. You're an engineer in training, and you did prepare or help prepare this plan in connection with the hearing this evening.
Yes.
It's marked as B2.
Yes.
Okay. And you are employed by the Crossroads Group,
Yes.
and you operate as part of the Crossroads Group under the direction of a certified engineer. That would be Jeremy Hoagland. Is that correct?
It would be Joshua Hoagland.
Josh. Okay, so it's Joshua.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Given that, and you have reviewed the township's zoning code in connection with this matter?
Yes.
Excellent. Mr. Fox, given what Mr. Camp has said this evening, I think it's appropriate to qualify him as an expert in civil engineering and in land use and zoning as it relates to this project specifically.
Okay?
All right, excellent, thank you. Luke, I'm going to ask you just a couple of questions about the project. And are you familiar with the project that was previously approved by this board on this site?
Yes.
All right, and that project was an 18-unit apartment complex, correct?
Yes, it was.
All right, and this site, when I refer to this site, I'm referring to the site located at 4446 Skippack Pike, and that's comprised of two parcels. One ending in parcel 008 and the other ending in number 005. Is that correct?
I'm not sure on the numbers. It is two parcels. I can grab a plan quick.
All right, so if I told you that if I told you those are the two numbers, though, you'd believe me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this tract is approximately 1.3 acres in total.
Yes.
Great. And as I indicated before, previously this tract was approved for an 18-unit apartment complex.
Correct.
And the applicant is now proposing to put an 8-unit townhome development in that is substantially in compliance with the zoning exhibit plan marked as B2.
Yes.
And in addition to those, if we turn to exhibit B2, in addition to the 8 units, there are some other improvements, parking lot, and trail connectivity or sidewalk in the front portion of the property.
Yep.
And this property then is located in the general commercial zoning district.
Yes.
And in connection with this project, you have reviewed the letters from Mr. Woodrow and Mr. Zadlow that have been marked B4 and B5.
Yes, we have.
And it's my understanding that the applicant is willing to comply with the comments that are set forth in those letters.
Yes.
And in essence, what you are proposing is also to reduce the number of residential units from, again, 18 to 10, cutting it by more than half, correct?
Right.
18 to 8.
Yes.
And you're going to have 18 to 8, I'm sorry,
You
thank
said
you.
10.
And you're going to have approximately 44 parking spots on the correct?
Yes, if you count the garages and the parking spaces, it's 44, yes.
Great, so what you have is there's
sorry.
2 spots in the garage, 2 spots in front of the garage, and then there's a series of spots on the other side, I'll call it opposite, towards the road.
Yes,
All right. And by code, you're required to have, how many spots?
24.
And
24 total spots required by code, so you're exceeding what is required by code, correct?
yes.
was it, I'm sorry, I didn't hear, what is the total proposed parking spaces? I know you require 24.
44.
44,
are
thank you.
provided.
Yep. Good job, sorry.
No, that's quite all right, Mr. Fox. And now, Luke, have you gone, I'm sure that you went through the standards for conditional use that are required under the township's ordinance, so I'm just gonna go through those with you really quickly, and then open it up to the board for questions. So, in your professional opinion, this use is in no way injurious to public health, safety, or welfare, correct?
Correct.
And in your opinion, there really is not very much traffic going to be generated by this site, particularly in light of the fact that you reduced the number of residential units from 18 to 8.
Right.
And you are providing, in your professional opinion, some pedestrian connectivity as would be required by the code.
Yes.
And you're willing to comply, the applicant is willing to comply, that is, with anything that the fire chief may require with respect to access to the site.
Yes.
With that being said, then, I don't think there's anything further that I have for you. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Not right now.
Okay, great. Then, Mr. Fox, I think it would be appropriate to open it up to the board for any questions the board may have. I have nothing further for you.
Pardon me, Lou, can you spell your last name for the record, please?
KAMP.
Thank you.
I do have some questions, but I'll turn, I always have questions, so I'll turn to the rest of the board first. Anyone have a question? I see letters from Tim Woodrow and Joe Zadlow listing some observations and conditions, potential conditions. When do we review those, or is that just built into the conditional use? For example,
Mr. Fox, those are built into the conditional use. We made them as exhibits to the conditional use hearing. And if the board is so inclined to act on this evening later, those would be part of the requirements, complying with those letters to the extent that, or to the satisfaction rather, of the township engineer and manager would be conditions of approval.
okay, so for example, just for the audience here, where it says, the sewer manhole causes the creation of extremely acute angle and sewer flow. This would be problematic in the long term. The sewer lateral must be redesigned to remove this angle break. That would just automatically, we don't have to specify that out. It's already built into the usage, right?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Fox, if I could.
Yep.
I might as well, if I can, why don't I address the review letters now?
Sure, yeah,
Save a little
please.
time,
Please do, yeah,
down
because
the
there
road.
was
So,
something,
I guess as far as Mr. Woodrow's letter is concerned, everything on that list will comply. One change that I would like to make, it came up in both Mr. Zadlow's review and Mr. Woodrow's review, is the dumpster enclosure, which is in front of unit number 1.
Yep.
Since we need to have an HOA for this community, we want to eliminate that dumpster enclosure completely. And what we will do is just have a single trash hauler for the 8 units. It'll just be a residential tote, one for trash, one for recycle. It'll be 1 day a week. Trash truck will pull in, empty them just as if it was your neighborhood, and then back out. That way we don't have an ugly dumpster sitting there. We don't have any smells, any trash. By removing that dumpster, it addresses one of Mr. Zadlow's major comments, would be access to the rear yard of those units. With that dumpster being gone, we can sneak around the side there. And to tie in with that comment, and also pretty much the only comment on the county review letter was access to the rear yard and adding a few additional plantings to the stormwater basin. So if we'd like to work with township staff and remove some of the plantings we have on that west side of the building and move some of them to the stormwater basin and along the far end of the parking lot there to have a little division between the parking lot and the stormwater basin. We are working on the sewer connection to get rid of that acute angle there. We're gonna move that down to the eastern end of the site and tie into 73 in a different spot there. So that will eliminate that comment and improve that design. Again, all the rest of those are will comply on Mr. Woodrow's letter. Mr. Zava, I know you had a comment about moving the building back to get the sidewalk further away from the parking lot. We can move that sidewalk without moving the building, and we'll work with you and staff to bump that sidewalk a little closer to the large sycamore trees that are there. It was shown on the plan to just stay away from those big, beautiful trees along 73, but we will be able to move the sidewalk significantly further away from the parking lot. And I guess the other comment was the lighting. We'll be glad to work with you to get those lights to match the village streetscape.
Just one comment with the trash. The trash, can the homeowners association require that the containers be kept in the garage?
Yes. Neat. So not a problem at all. Make sure that's done.
You guys both okay with moving the dumpster? You don't see okay with moving the dumpster? You don't see a problem with that?
I don't.
Yeah,
That actually is.
Seems better to me. I just want.
Yeah. It was certainly something we wanted to make sure was attractive and not in such a prominent location. So
Right.
the solution to put the toters in the garages, I think, is a better solution for sure.
That kind of slipped the apartment concept to
Right.
the townhome. We never got rid of it, so it should have been gone earlier in this stage. So I think, all those comments on the 3 review letters, unless I'm missing something.
Joe, Tim, is that to your satisfaction? That's your satisfaction?
Yeah, the only thing I'd like to get on the record is the form of ownership. These are not going to be fee simple lots for each townhouse. This would be more a planned community where there would be an association that owns the parking lot, the landscaping, the basin, and then would be responsible for maintenance of those items.
Gotcha.
The buyer would own the unit itself.
Gotcha.
And just make sure that's clear. There would need to be some homeowners association documents that are drafted and approved by our solicitor's office, just to make sure that is in keeping with other associations in town. But with that point of clarification, that does address the items in my review, yes.
Okay. Joe, you good with that? Is there anything that wasn't addressed?
I am. Excellent.
Thank you. Any questions from the board that came out? All right, Joe, I see no more questions from the board here. What's the next component of this hearing?
The next part of this then would be to ask the public if there's a public comment for or against the application.
Would the public like to make a comment for or against the application? I see Clint. Name and address, please.
Clint Buckwalter, Creamery Road. I just have a question. When they were doing the apartment, they had minimum for the roadway, a minimum for the entranceway, and it just didn't fit. You always regret when you go to minimum allowed. Will this still be the minimum allowed, or, and I don't know if this is a final approval or if this is just preliminary.
I don't even know minimum allowed. Can you expand on that?
The entranceway was 50 feet.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, trying to come in off of 73 at 100 miles an hour, somebody's waiting to try to get out, and somebody's making a right, it gets a little tangled.
I see 24 feet. 24 feet at its narrowest with a funnel shape entrance and exit.
Yeah, but I would suggest that PennDOT was the driver of much of that intersection
And
design.
again, I'm not remember, and every time you go with the minimum, you regret it.
Thank you, Glenn.
Somebody regrets it.
Yeah, PennDOT did approve that driveway, and it was actually modified to meet with some of the comments that they originally had, so it's a little bit wider than that first plan.
Okay.
Comments for or against? I see none, Joe.
Excellent, then Mr. Fox, will be appropriate now to close the hearing. We're gonna delay the deliberation, on this matter until after we have the second hearing, just so that we don't, waste our court reporter's time. But, it would be now appropriate to take a motion to close the hearing.
I will make the motion to close the hearing. Do I have a second? I'll second. Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes.
Excellent, thank you. So, with that being said, we have concluded the conditional use hearing, and we'll now open up our hearing on the adoption or proposed adoption of the zoning ordinances before you this evening. And that ordinance relates to what I call small or micro wireless facilities. And just so that everybody understands this, the reason that we have, the board has to consider this ordinance is because back in 2018, there was an FCC order that came down and indicated that these wireless facilities, the service providers were allowed to put these wireless facilities in rights of way. That dovetailed with the Pennsylvania Utility Commission decision that indicated that these wireless carriers are supposed to be treated, at least in large part, like a public utility, and therefore cannot be regulated by local zoning. The Pennsylvania legislature then went and took that order and decision and enacted the Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act, which then allowed, it basically turned back over some control to the local municipality, very limited control. So this ordinance that you are considering this evening is intended to allow for the township to have the maximum amount of control it can over these facilities. That being said, right now, the wireless carrier came into the township and wanted to put a small wireless facility co-located on a pole, a utility pole. They can do that without getting payment to the township and without any application, because we don't have any way we don't have an application process that's been adopted by our zoning ordinance. So in short, this ordinance allows for, again, the township to regulate how these things go in, at least the extent that it can. It authorizes the township to charge a fee for anything that's located in the right-of-way. It also allows the township to charge an application fee and a fee for relocating a pole or to replace an existing pole. And when I say pole, I mean utility poles. So in short, that's what the ordinance is before you this evening. The purpose of this hearing is to allow for the public to ask any questions that it may have related to the ordinance. And I can try to field as many of those questions as possible. But again, this is a situation where we are extremely limited in what we can do, and at least the township will have some control over its rights of way. So with that being said, I think it would be appropriate to open it up for questions, and it's just limited to this wireless ordinance.
Before I turn it over to the public, does the board have any questions about the ordinance? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to the public. Anyone have any questions what this is and why we're in the situation we are to have to either pass it or pass on any kind of controls or scheduling of fee? Yes, name and address, please.
Yes, Tandy Cattouse, 4238 Landis Road. I spoke to Chris earlier and he answered a lot of my questions already, but I still have some more particular questions, I guess, reporting to the ordinance itself. On, I guess, the fourth page, I'm sorry, I'm being real specific. I'm sorry. On page 5, where it talks about section B, 4B. It says if a calculation cannot be achieved under section 4I, small wireless facility may be installed on a new utility pole. When I talked to Chris earlier, I asked him about the new pole, and he said that unless there was an underground development, there wouldn't be any new poles, but in that case, there might be. But this was really confusing to me. It's in this, the way it's written, it sounds like they can put up a pole if the other existing poles aren't working. So I'm not sure if it's just a wording there.
Sure. Hey, Joe, can you speak to the, that's a point that I bet a lot of people have questions about. Can you speak to the point about
Sure.
their ability to add a pole where a pole didn't previously exist, and how this may or may not even control that? We may have any control it, but kind of answer that to those questions.
Sure, and the short answer is, if there is a particular place where it is determined that a pole is needed because there's not appropriate coverage, just say that you have a small cul-de-sac and there's no poles on the cul-de-sac, and at the end of the cul-de-sac is a house where service is poor or non-existent. The utility, the wireless provider has a right to install a new pole to allow for that coverage to be in that area. Practically speaking, is that going to happen? Most likely no. But unless, with very, very limited exceptions, the utility provider, in this case the wireless service providers, have a right to put those poles in, and it's not controlled by the township. It's controlled by statute, and it's controlled by the PUC. Just like PICO would have the right to come in and put a pole. Now that said, there's a carve out, so that if there are areas where the township has exclusively underground utilities and cable TV, then in those areas, the township may be able to say to a wireless provider, no, we have all underground utilities here, we don't want a pole there. And there are carve-outs to that, but that becomes the rule. If there are those areas within the township, again, where there are all underground utilities. So that's the long and the short of it. I hope it answers your question, and if it doesn't, I'd be happy to go into it further detail.
But Joe, we for our ordinance, we have no spirit of control of that anyway, right?
Correct.
If I could, Mr. Chairman, the ordinance is written that in those circumstances, in order to go forward with a request for a pole, they must acquire a variance from the zoning hearing board and demonstrate that it's a hardship, and they must win that case at the zoning hearing board. That's the maximum protection that we were able to write into the ordinance.
It's so confusing.
Yes,
because
that is correct.
it said under section 4I, but I couldn't find section 4I, so it was, I didn't know what that meant. Yeah,
Sure.
so that's why it was just a little confusing. The other question I have is on page 2, where it talks about, I'm sorry, page 3, where it says the volume of all the other associated wireless facility, whether grounded, monitored, or pole, is, like, do they have the capability of putting that underground if possible? I mean, I know some of those things they can't put underground, but is that an option?
I'm sorry, where are you looking?
It's page 3, section M2.
Are you asking if the antenna could be underground?
Well, no, no, because I know that the antennas and some of the boxes can't, but I mean, like, I think, like, I was reading through the Collegeville section, because they have this in there, and they're saying, they refer it to wherever the wireless support outside of the right-of-way, it could be installed underground.
Oh, so all the wires to wherever the pole
Right,
have to be
right.
in the
Is
underground
that-
as well.
That didn't mention that in there, so I wasn't sure.
Joe, is that true? So if they, in the scenario, if they somehow got the right to put a pole in a non-poled community at the end of the cul-de-sac, would all wires to that pole have to be underground, or could they run poles to that pole?
As long as it doesn't create as long as it's not cost prohibitive, then yes, the zoning hearing board could require wires to go underground. But the section that is being referred to here, the volume and all of those calculations, those, again, these are not standards that we came up with. They're coming straight out of statute.
Okay. I'm sorry, I have a bunch of questions.
Keep going, you're good.
The maintenance, is that, doesn't mention anything about maintenance in here, and them being required to you know, to perform, to ensure the upkeep of the facility in order to promote like safety and security of the borough residents and businesses. It doesn't mention that part at all in any of the.
Correct, it's in the statute, they have a requirement to maintain, and if they don't, if they do not maintain the facility as they're supposed to, and really, it's more about right-of-way than it is actually the pole, or the small wireless facility. But in any event, if those things are not maintained properly, the township has a right to charge them.
Okay. And then what about inspections? It doesn't mention that, like, does the borough reserve the right to inspect any of these towers? And to access the right of way to
No,
make sure?
inspections are, those types of things are not handled by the township. Inspection of its right of way, yes, but the actual facility itself, that's something that's outside of the jurisdiction of the town.
Right, the right of way. I'm just asking these things because, like, I know that the Collegeville Borough has these things written into its ordinance, whereas it seems like ours is a little light as to some of these things that I'm bringing up. Like, it doesn't even mention these type of items. And then, like, I guess safety concerns is the other thing. Like, what if a pole is hit? Is wind, lightning, noise, is that a factor in some of these issues? And then, like, if there is an emergency, who is contacted? Like, are there signs posted on the
Can you hear the questions? So I think you gotta peel back a couple questions. So
Sure.
peel back a couple questions. So
Sure.
let's go at the last one that wasn't answered first.
It has to do with safety concerns, like if a car takes out a pole, or lightning or wind or something like that, and a pole is damaged, like, is there any safety measurements in that, like, as to who is called and who takes care of this?
You
Or
got
is
Joe?
there-
You want to paraphrase?
Yeah, sure, and let me, I think that what we have to remember here is that what we are regulating is what is permitted by statute again, and that is just where these can be located, fees that can be charged, things that you're talking about, like with any public utility. If a PICO pole gets tipped, PICO gets called. Those aren't things that you would necessarily put into a regulation. As far as, you know, as far as some of the things, public health, safety, welfare, and whether or not this ordinance is light, this ordinance is really to be read in conjunction with Act 50. Act 50 we can't trump anyway, so I'm fairly familiar with Collegeville's ordinance, and they have a similar two-step process that is being enacted here, one for what I call regular wireless facilities and the other for micro wireless facilities. They just parrot back what's already in the statute relative to a lot of the things that you're speaking to.
Okay.
I didn't feel it necessary to put those things in here because all we can do is parrot the statute.
Okay, it's harder for us, me being a homeowner, and I have poles on my property, to know what the rules and regulations are, because I don't really have access to this. So this is where I would go to find out this information. So I would think that this would be the first place that I would look to find out what my township requires.
Joe, where could somebody go to see the statute that they're entitled to that we're addressing with our resolution?
Sure, you can go right onto the House of Reps webpage. If you go into the PA legislature, all of the statutes of the Commonwealth are available online.
And you called this what, 50?
It's Act 50, and it's also it's part of Act 50 of 2021, and really what it's called is the Small Wireless Facilities Deployment Act.
Could that be referenced in the ordinance so that everybody would know where to go?
Is that necessary to reference the ordinance, in the ordinance, Joe?
Sorry.
No, we don't have to reference it in the ordinance at all.
Okay. You're the lawyer.
So the only, I have two more questions.
Keep going.
The removal or the like if one of these units reaches its end of its life and it's discontinued, will it be taken down? Like, is there some type of requirement there where they have 60 days to remove this, so it's not hanging on a pole for forever? I mean, that wasn't in the agreement either, so I'm not sure how that's handled. And maybe it is in that Act 50, but
Joe,
I'm just saying.
you hear the question?
Sure, I can hear the question. Sure, I can hear the question. It's asking about abandonment or removal,
Yep.
or if, I would imagine antiquated equipment, any of those types of things. Damaged equipment. Just like with any public utility, there's a PUC component to this, a Pennsylvania Utility Commission component to this, as well as Act 50 that would have certain requirements of it. But again, we're kind of, the township, I should say, is very limited in what it can do as a result of that Federal Communications Commission order of 2018, and then the PUC's decision to allow these facilities or these providers to be considered like public utilities. There was a time when they weren't, up until very recently they weren't, which kept a lot of communications facilities out of rights-of-way. But I guess they have a stronger lobbying arm than the municipalities do.
And then, with the right to operate, I see that it's for a period of 5 years with the 2 additional 5-year extensions. Is that coming from the 50 Act, or is that something that we're putting in, that we're allowing? Like,
I'm
is that?
sorry, you broke up, or I broke up a little
sorry.
bit.
I see that it's a period of 5 years with 2 additional 5-year extensions, which would make it a total of 15 years. That this equipment would be.
Yes.
Is that something that was in their requirements, or is this something that we had put in?
That's something that the Pennsylvania State Association of Townships, PSATs, recommended.
Okay.
Is that for billing purposes, Joe? That we bill in 5-year cycles or something like
Yeah,
that, 5-year
yes.
contracts?
Essentially, yes, because and later this evening, in association with this, there is a fee schedule change to be adopted, a resolution, and it sets out certain fees. Those fees are again, they are all regulated. They're not things that we can adjust ourselves. Part of the litigation that occurred around this area was because some municipalities were charging very, very high fees. And some of the wireless providers, it was cost prohibitive to the wireless providers, so they challenged the fees.
And Joe, it's my understanding that if we don't pass a resolution, we don't have the ability to even charge the fees. Is that correct?
Right.
So this is our only shot at having any kind of control or any kind of revenue. And that revenue can go in the general fund?
Yes, it's supposed to be the fee, the annual fee that's charged. There is, depending upon how things turn out ultimately in the courts, there is an escalator provision, but it's a very small provision. And then as far as the fees that are collected, they are related to maintenance of the right-of-way, but they're not earmarked for that or anything of the nature. They can go right to the general fund and used for any appropriate purpose.
Thank you. You still have more questions? I'm sorry.
Do they have to reapply for an extension? Like, do they have to go through the approval process again, or is it just automatic?
I think it would more be an automatic. It's intended to be an automatic extension.
Okay. And then will residents be notified in, like, if they're in that 500-foot area that this is going up on their telephone pole?
No, well, yes and no. So the only way that the residents will be notified if it was going up on their pole or a pole within 500 feet is if there's a requirement for the utility provider, the wireless communication provider, to go to the zoning hearing board. Otherwise, it would just be an application to the township, much like a building permit application.
I don't have any idea that this work is going to be taking place. It'll just happen.
Only if it's work that was required to go before the zoning hearing board, which would then have to be posted,
Okay.
right?
Correct.
I
So
saw.
to play it forward with your example of, hey, there is no pole located down the street from me. There's, again, small development. In that case, there's the requirement to go before the zoning hearing board. In that case, there would be notification before a pole went up. If you are co-locating on an existing pole, or if you are replacing an existing pole, then no, there's no notification.
Okay. And then I saw townships that historical buildings, were exempted from this. And I don't know how they got the exemption, but we're not putting that in our ordinance. So I'm not sure what the case is there.
I've seen that. I know what you are referring to, and I don't believe that that is something that is permitted under the existing. I think that's from a relic left over from some older legislation, but I don't think that's something in our township, in this township, that is of too great of a concern just because of the location of existing poles.
That's all I have. I appreciate the questions and the answers. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw another hand go up in the back. Are you, good. Cindy, name and address.
Cindy Boberka, Landis Road. Just two quick questions. If they're putting up poles, are they going through the planning commission to make sure that they're not placed, I guess, in front of people, not on their driveway, but that there's no backup? Like if I'm backing out of my driveway, I already have one pole behind me that makes it a little bit of a challenge. So is the location of the poles a concern, or we have no control over that?
I'm thinking they're gonna use existing poles, but Joe, if they had to add a new pole, would that necessarily require them to go for the zoning board to review the location of that pole?
Well, at the very least, it may not be the zoning hearing board, but at the very least, there for a relocation or new pole, there is an application process. The application comes into the township. There's a fee that's charged up to $1,000. The application is reviewed similar to what I would just call a building permit application. So yes, something like that, where consideration of an existing driveway should come into play and be addressed. If there was no other place to put the pole, then of course it goes there. If it's an existing pole, it's already there. But as far as something new, and under that scenario, that would be reviewed by the township manager and possibly the township engineer, at the minimum.
The other one was just, I don't know that I totally understand the whole wireless concept. Is it for one wireless company, or is it for any wireless company like Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile, or is that something totally different?
No, you're hitting the nail on the head. Unfortunately, it's for any wireless provider. So it's AT&T, Verizon, Xfinity, anybody that comes through, they can have these facilities. And there's nothing, again, unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do about it.
Okay. Our cell service a little bit better.
That's what they're hoping. Over here, name and address for the record, please.
Sharon Lynch, 4114 Serenity Street. Hi, everyone. I would just like to advocate the historical building clause, if we would call it a clause, into the ordinance, just in case, because we do have a lovely historic downtown. So I would just advocate that maybe we add that, or that it has to go before the zoning hearing board.
Well, let me ask a question. What's the concern with the historic? They're not going to attach it to a building, so what's the concern with that piece of it? What would the ordinance look like? What would the exclusion look like?
Mr. Fox, if I may, I'm going to address this real simply because I think that we're getting a little bit, we may be confusing two issues. This ordinance and the right that wireless communications providers have right now is specific to right-of-way. It has nothing to do with co-locating on buildings,
Gotcha.
Whatever you want to think of. It has nothing to do with that whatsoever. Township building, it has nothing to do with water towers. That's a different animal. That's not this.
Gotcha. So they couldn't go down the village or put stuff up because Dave would have something to say about that.
They could, once this is passed.
In right-of-ways.
Right-of-ways.
Other questions? Saw some hands up here. Go ahead, name and address for the record, please.
Debbie Cave, 22419 Drive. Do we currently have any of these small wireless communication facilities in town now?
Great question. Do we, Joe?
And if so, how many? And will they be grandfathered under this clause?
Do we have any existing already, Joe?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, and this doesn't mean they're going to, it just allows them, they're gonna do it. When they do it, this gives us
So
the
not that
control.
we're aware of, there could be, we're just not aware of it.
We would have been notified though, we're saying we don't know just because you don't have the records in front of you, but if they did, we would have known by now, right?
I would have seen it driving around. I have never seen one in Skippack driving through town.
Prior to this ordinance, would they have had to tell us?
What would you mean, what do you mean by driving around? Because I see
No.
all these vans all the time
No,
driving around.
you would see them on a pole. So these would go on existing poles, or they would have installed a new pole, and it's in the right of way, so that's near the road. And as you're driving down the road, you're gonna see it either on a telephone pole, or you're gonna see a new pole that's put up with one of these on there. I have never seen one in every street I've been on in this township, and trust me, I've driven on
Now,
every street.
what about underground?
You can't have an antenna underground.
I don't
Wiring
know.
can be underground, but the antenna can't be. It's an actual antenna.
Got it, that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Yep, it's an actual antenna you'd see.
Great.
Prior to this ordinance, they could do it without telling us. This is one of the controls we're gonna try to put in place with this, right? Because they can do it. We can't stop that. We're just putting parameters and mostly charging them, so.
Yeah, right, Mr. Fox, and where the concern comes from is, anybody that's my age and a little older remembers cable television when it first started, and cable television providers just started hanging wire on pole everywhere, whether it was Spectrum or Verizon or whoever it was. They just started hanging wires everywhere. This prevents that.
Mr. Chairman, this may be helpful or not, but when cell towers first hit the scene, every municipality in Pennsylvania wrote their own cell tower regulations. And for the communication industry, that was a nightmare. It required hiring an attorney, required hiring a planner, required hiring a radio wave expert to come in and testify that the radio waves were not going to ruin the brains of the children playing in the street. And they rallied their money and their sources and went to the Pennsylvania legislature and said, look, this is the coming technology. We can't go through having every municipality create their own regulations, their own rules, charging their own fees. And they were successful, and the state legislature has enacted this ordinance, and that's it. It's ours.
Thank you, John. Other questions, comments? This hearing is really for you guys. Not too much we can do about it, so. All right, I see no more questions, Joe.
Great, then, Mr. Fox, I think it's appropriate to close this hearing, and if somebody wants to make that motion.
Joe, could I just add that the Montgomery County Planning Commission did review the ordinance and recommended adoption of the ordinance. So the county who is reviewing every ordinance in the county is satisfied with our ordinance.
Excellent. With that said, I'll make a motion to close this hearing. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes, you can close the hearing. All right, we're gonna take a quick little recess here.
Mr. Fox?
Yep.
I was gonna say now, you took the words out of my mouth.
Okay, we're gonna take a quick little recess here, to talk through these two hearings, and we'll be back in a few minutes, start the regular session and go through, okay? Thank you for your patience.
Shall we?
She's smart, isn't she?
Thanks to you guys.
But who owns the pole?
Just like everything
Unless somebody has abandoned property.
So far, so good. Yeah.
Actually, she just converted to.
Steady flow, I hope it stays that way.
Yeah, I don't
She just says my name and.
That's why we like to go to the outlets. We want to oh, we're not far from it. Well, that was fun. I'll tell you, that was
We good to start? We're gonna get started here again. Thanks everyone for your patience, appreciate it. All right, let's talk about the conditional use. The townhouse is at 4446 Skippack Pike. Seems pretty straightforward. There were some conditions that we'd like to make sure were entered on the record. So Joe, can I turn it over to you to read the conditions that we discussed?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Fox. And so we are reconvening the hearing very briefly here for the matter of Marina Holdings LLC at 4446 Skippack Pike. And the board has decided to consider this matter this evening and subject to the following conditions. One, the applicant shall comply with the comments in the review letter from the Skippack Township engineer, Woodrow and Associates, dated October 25, 2021. Two, the applicant shall comply with comments in the review letter from the Skippack Township land planner, Joseph A. Zadlow, dated October 25, 2021, the satisfaction of the township manager. Three, the proposed development and use of the tract shall substantially comply with the plan titled Zoning Exhibit Plan dated September 20, 2021, bearing no revision date, prepared by Crossroads Group LLC and consisting of one sheet. Four, the conditional use decision and order of the Skippack Township Board of Supervisors dated April 10, 2019 is rescinded in its entirety and replaced hereby. 5, the number of townhome units shall not exceed 8 units. 6, the applicant shall consolidate the parcels of the tract into a single parcel. 7, the applicant shall provide at least 24 and not more than 44 on-site parking spaces. 8, the applicant shall install a sidewalk or trail along the tract's Skippack Pike frontage or an equivalent pedestrian connectivity satisfactory to the Skippack Township engineer. 9, any signage on the tract will comply with all the provisions of the Skippack Township zoning code. 10, no expansion of the proposed townhome buildings or other structures may occur without first obtaining a new or amended conditional use approval and land development approval from the Board of Supervisors, which approvals may be conditioned, granted, or denied in the sole discretion of the Board of Supervisors. 11, no change in use of the tract may occur without first obtaining a new or amended conditional use approval of the Board of Supervisors. 12, the applicant shall comply with all applicable provisions of the GC General Commercial Zoning District, provided, however, the applicant will or has obtained zoning relief to locate a stormwater basin less than 50 feet from the proposed townhome buildings. And 13, the applicant shall, to the satisfaction of the Board of Supervisors, comply with all applicable provisions of the Skippack Township Subdivision and Land Development Ordinance, unless expressly waived by resolution of the Board.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions, Mr. Reno, about the conditions?
Are you willing to accept them?
I will accept them.
Okay, great. Frankly, my opinion is that this is significantly better than the alternatives and lower concentration, lower traffic. I like it a lot, actually. So with that, I'm going to move that the Board of Supervisors Skippack grant conditional use for the townships at 4446 Skippack Pike in accordance with what stipulations Joe just read. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Motion passes, Joe.
Great.
All right, we're going to come back to the land development at the end during new business, okay, Joe?
Yes, that's fine, Mr. Fox, and that concludes your hearing. And at this point, we can release the court reporter.
Good. All right, so.
I haven't seen her run to the door yet, so.
It's okay, the good thing, everything's recorded now. Everything's recorded, so we'll get this taken care of. For those at home, the court reporter left kind of in between, there was miscommunication, but everything is recorded, good. With that said, let's get into the regular meeting. Before everything started, before all the public hearings, we did have an executive session where we discussed personnel. And now we'll open up to public comment. Clint.
Yes, Clip up order. Guys, a Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you and everybody. Like I said, have a happy and safe holiday. See you in January. Yes.
Dave Maples, Hilda Vital Road, your favorite agent provocateur. I am here to talk about the airport development project. We have done some research, and the plan as it stands right now is not compliant with the law. Because the CDO requires 50% open space, 2/3 of the open space on the site plan, or 2/3 of the unbuilt space on the site plan consists of detention basins, and according to section 200-12, subsection 3C, or 6C, no stormwater management facilities may be located on the surface of open space. So given those restrictions, the 50% is nowhere near met, because out of the 60 acres, I think there's one parcel that's about 10, and another that's maybe 2 or 3. And I may need to brush up on my remedial math, but 10 plus 3 doesn't equal 30. In addition, we have been canvassing in the area. We have had 289 responses. Of those, 273 are opposed to this project. 16 refused to sign the petition. Some of them said they were fine with it being built. Others said they were opposed, but they did not want to go on record as being opposed for one reason or another. So I would like to hear your comment on that.
It's public comment, not my comment. I will say this though, it's not on the agenda. We have not seen it. You're saying that the plan is not compliant. I've never seen it. I would suggest anybody who has energy around this, and I think probably everyone in Skippack has energy around this, pay attention to the agendas, pay attention to the meetings. I think the first board that would see the plan, Chris, remind me, is?
The planning commission will be the first. The next planning commission is currently scheduled for December 20th, but staff has been discussing, because there's been a lot of public pushback on the fact that it's only 5 days before Christmas, that it's looking like we will push the airport to the January meeting. That way it ensures as many people from the public can be here as possible and does not conflict with any holiday plans and things of that nature. So that will be officially announced probably next week on both our website and our Facebook page, if that is going to be the case, but that's the way it is looking right now.
I encourage everybody with questions, comments, to show up, and we'll go from there. Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Public comment. Cindy, your hand first.
Oh, that's okay. More coffee. Just gonna ask my monthly question. What's going on with Gypsy Rose?
So we did have a discussion. I had a discussion with Mr. Markle and his people, and so we are working with them to get it torn down, and they will be coming in with a development plan in the not too distant future at this point. So we are working with them to get that addressed as soon as possible.
So they're gonna take down the entire building?
That is my understanding, yes.
Even the part that's being rented in the back?
They're working on finding a space for him, but yes, that's my understanding.
And then after that, it becomes an open space, and then they'll come up with a plan as to what they're gonna do with that spot, that area?
Correct. They're working on a plan now, is my understanding, of a development. What it is or what it'll look like, I don't know yet, but we'll see once that comes in the not too distant future.
And when is to begin?
I don't have a concrete date right now, not yet.
Yeah, let me just make a general statement here. So, Cindy, love the question. don't wait till the monthly meetings to come and ask questions, all right? You can contact Chris, phone, email.
And I
comment.
have in the past.
Absolutely.
Right?
You know, the format of these is really public comment. We've kind of gotten away from that. I don't want to stifle anybody. Ask your questions, and if you don't like the answer, come here and make a comment about it. But as far as every township, every county, every school board has a certain format to the flow. So comments, sure. We don't always know the answers. Please stay in touch with Chris throughout the month and get updates. And Chris will keep you on his calendar. When something changes, he'll contact you if you let him know that's what you want him to do, all right?
I love that.
So, there you go, Chris.
I think the township should buy the property and turn it into another park.
Excellent. Dave Marple sells nothing. He's a collector.
2 words, eminent domain.
Oh. Skippack Township, stealing people's private land. Great. All right, next question, public comment. Yes.
John Williams, 2008 Fort Bedford. Just a comment, I think it was maybe this, somebody said, talked about last night or recently. Chris, I know you've been in contact with David Jones in our development, and there's been some words there, but I think it's time that we get a little more recognition over there as far as like our land and our property and our streets and our sidewalks. Nick, I know you personally walked around the neighborhood. Currently right now I see on the project tonight is there a request for a final payment for the water project that was done, the sewer project. I don't think it should be there be a final payment in this. If you walk around the neighborhood, there's PVC pipes 6 inches, 8 inches sticking out of the ground all through the neighborhood. We were told they would be cut down. The land cut down that was done after all this project is absolutely terrible. I've seen people come in and hire their own landscape people. We dealt with a Pico. I personally had Pico out 4 different times. They send out the same person who puts some hay and some grass in. I still have a big hole in my yard. I just think it's time we get some recognition over there. And this project, I know has been pushed off until the paving project until the spring. I've seen this in Talmenton. Alan Myers pushed them off as well. So my question then, is it gonna go back to another bid? Like, how's this gonna work? Is there?
That's on the agenda, and when we get there, I promise, we'll go through and make sure you know everything. You're exactly right. We put $1 million investment here. We want to finish this off strong. You're important. Everybody's important to us, and when we get to that section, we'll do a deep dive and make sure that you at least get the answers you need, even if you're unhappy with those answers, okay? So thank you. Public comment.
Oh, so based on what you just shared with us, Karen Lynch, 4114 Serenity Street, the budget's on the agenda too. Are we gonna have an opportunity to ask questions then, or do you want me to ask now?
You can make a public comment on the budget. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, all right, a big nugget on the budget, right? And I am a proponent of open space, so just want to make that clear right up front. But we collect a lot of revenue year over year, and we budget much less than we collect. And we haven't even spent the budgeted amounts for the last 2 consecutive years, and I know COVID often comes up as an excuse for things in the most recent year. But at some point it appears that we're gonna have far more revenue than there is even available space in the township. And so visibility to a plan, and not just 1 year at a time, but maybe for the next 5 to 10 years, would be really great. And so when would we be able to see a plan for open space going forward? And is there potentially an opportunity to reduce the tax?
Yeah, so what I'd say is any questions about that? Questions about that, and the budget's been posted for 20 days. Feel free to reach out to Chris. As far as what you're referring to, I think you're referring to the open space tax specifically and not the spending?
And then, of course, in the budget, there's a lot of money on that open space page. There's a lot of.
In the 2022 budget, there's a bit of money planned in terms of expenditures, but there's a lot of money there.
The tax is, it's impossible not to do Q&A. Impossible not to do Q&A, it really is. Feel free to stop over after it and we can talk this through, but the tax was voted in order to get it off, we have to go through some stuff with the state. We're always reviewing whether we should or shouldn't. The fund is for perpetual maintenance as well, so at some point we could stop it and use that forever as long as we're frugal with it. We don't just spend money to buy land and waste it, so sometimes we spend less than we collect, but that's the frugal way to go. There's a reason why we're double A
Yeah.
plus rated, okay?
Triple A.
So, triple A rated. So with that said, you know, feel free to talk with me afterward about your thoughts on that, and we can see how that goes in the future. Other public comment? Go ahead.
Yep, WK 224 Tanner Drive. I have questions that I now have to turn into comments, so
Go ahead.
I will do my best. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak during public comment time. I also wanted to have a shout out to Chris Heleniak because he's been very responsive to my request for documents regarding the budget and regarding supporting documentation. So thank you very much for doing that. Kudos to the township. I have had the opportunity to look at the audited financial statements for last year, look at the budget for this year, the budget for last year, and we are in very good financial standing for township, right? We had over $33 million in cash and investments at the end of last year. It's a significant amount of money that the township has available to it. It would be helpful for members here, town members, to understand what are our plans for utilizing that to the best opportunity of everyone here. I wanted to comment on $8 million of that money is invested in a mutual fund, which is not insured and it's not collateralized. And I will continue to have a dialogue with Chris to find out who we use for our investment choices, how often we look at these things, and what type of risk that the township wants to assume in putting our $8 million of the $33 million in that type of investment. And I also would like to note, I did note and wanted to comment on that medical insurance as a percentage of employee salaries seems to fluctuate significantly between which category you're in the budget. And I definitely dialogue with Chris going forward as to why there's significant variances and what are the township's contractual obligations regarding medical insurance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment and for pointing out how fiscally healthy we are. Any other public comment? And please do continue to work with Chris.
I will,
Yeah,
thank you very
excellent.
much.
Yep.
Great resource.
Yeah, Tom Baker, 747 Primrose Path. In recognition of time and everything that we've spent here, I have a number of questions that I was going to address to the board about specific items in the budget. Are those things that should be directed better to Chris?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that's well, it's just better for flow for the meeting, that's the intent, and that's what every township does in the country, so it's better format. So please do reach out to Chris, and if you don't like the response you're getting, then we'll take it up in public comment. Go ahead.
One last thing. So I've noticed in other quaint little towns, Ambler, Phoenixville, they have great
Honoring all of our local military heroes over many years and many different wars. Is that a possibility of having in our town?
We do.
My eyes closed.
They have it in,
Is it in the village?
In the
They
village.
have it down.
I'll answer that question, we do.
They're down now. They're down now.
Oh, they're down for Christmas?
Yeah, we have them up.
Yeah,
We
that's-
have them up basically from when we take the Christmas decorations down until we put them back up. So
That's weird, I've never.
basically all
I guess I
spring,
don't go in the
summer,
village
and
in the
goes to
spring and
fall.
summer. I don't know, I've never, honestly, that's awful, I'm so sorry.
Any other public comment?
Veterans Day.
Thank you for doing that so quickly.
A paragon of efficiency.
There you go. Like, hold on a minute. I see no other public comment, so let's pay some bills. First, we gotta do the approval of the November 10th, 2021 minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Chris, any correspondence?
Nothing this evening.
Oh, good. All right, now let's take a look at the Treasury Report. Do I have a motion and a second to pass the Treasury Report as of November 30th?
I'll make a motion to pass the bill.
Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion sent, all in favor? Aye. All right, let's pay some bills all in one block here. We're gonna pay the interim bills, November 25th, 2021, the general fund, in the amount of $35,561.18. The sewer fund, the amount of $3,091.62. Parks and Open Space, $2,441.27. As well as bills for payment December 8, 2021, the general fund of $25,351.30, sewer fund of $96,579.32, and Parks and Open Space for $4,236.66. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to pay the interbills and bill for payment in December.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. All right. Tim, it's all you, bud.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. And maybe speaking to the Fort Bevins Fair Hills Community Road project and specifically the sewer laterals at this point, our contractor, A.J. Jurich, has completed his work, but for the exception of that restoration in many of the front yards and some of those laterals that are high. There is about $17,000, $17,948.61 that we hold in retainage in cash that he is requesting that we knit back to him. We've held this amount until he posted his maintenance bond, about $45,000 in a maintenance bond that he's posted with us. And we have suggested that we are going to be making sure that he comes back in the spring and finishes the restoration work that he is responsible for. I can't hold him responsible for the PICO work, obviously, but any of that sewer work, that trench work, front yards, there is a lot of reseeding and some stabilization work that he needs to do. It's obviously wrong time of year to get that done, but we do have him, again, under that maintenance bond, coming back in the spring to get the topsoil work done, to clean up those high risers on the lateral cleanouts, and getting the reseeding done in the spring. And we certainly fully expect to do that, and we've had long conversations with his representative, and he's fully aware that that's his obligation. So with that being said, and again, with the maintenance bond in hand, I think we can recommend release of that retainage that we've held in the amount of $17,948.61.
So how much is the bond they put up, maintenance bond?
47.
What's the period, how long is that in place for?
18 months.
And so, how much runaround can they give us if they don't cut those laterals level, fill things in right, reseed? Can we just jump in and do it and then take it out of the maintenance bond?
Yes.
At our discretion, or do we have to give them like
Yeah,
90 days notice, or?
There is a process.
Yeah.
I actually sell performance payment bonds for a living.
Yeah.
I do FedEx part-time in this township, which is kind of why it's this point to see how much township are taken care of compared to the Fairless Hills section there, but that was my biggest question, is how long do these periods on these, is there a warranty bond involved in this as well with the work that was done underground?
Well, the maintenance bond is intended to cover all the work and restoration. So, and that is going to be 18-month period.
Can I ask why such a small amount?
It's
for such a large project?
It's 15% of the total contract. So we,
10%.
10%, it's $30,000, I'm sorry.
Okay.
So, but that's specific to just the sewer lateral stuff. So if there's problems with Pico's work or sinkholes from Pico, whatever, that's a separate thing, right?
Pico was in the yard, so there's nothing you can do, it's a never-ending battle.
And we have no control of them either.
Yeah,
I agree with
I
you.
talked to Chris multiple times.
Other than the sewer bond that we have for any restoration, there are other contractors that owe us money should things not be returned. Or they owe everything for the lateral extensions, for any sinkage, any where they remove the stumps, any front yard damage. Is that all coming from the sewer guys?
That is correct. Sewer guys are responsible for all of that.
And you're confident that the maintenance bond is going to cover that if we had to do it ourselves?
Good question. The contract documents only permit us to hold 10% of that maintenance bond.
Well, I would take that, I would make a motion to hold that cash because dollars, and there's only an additional $17,000 left, or what that was. That's only $62,000, and there's a lot of work to be done in there.
Is there any work they could, I'm sympathetic to the fact that if it's the end of the season, just for a second here now,
Sure.
that we're holding their money for several months when they have no ability to do something about it. Is there anything they could do now to allow some sort of release here? Or are they on hold until the spring?
They are planning to come back and address some of the issues. So now, I think sooner rather than the spring. The seeding obviously can't be done
Right,
now.
right.
However, they are willing to come into town for some of those,
High cleanouts.
cleanouts that are too high, take care of those. Obviously, those things can be done now, and he's willing to come in now to do those things. The seating, he's already said to us in email, he will be here, he knows there's seating and lawn restoration work that has to be fixed up. He'll be here in the spring as soon as they can, once the weather turns, to do that work, but he's willing to come in and do the lateral cleanouts, being too high, taking care of those now.
Is there any benefit to leaving the laterals to allow for any potential settling to avoid them being cut too short now and causing future problems with access to the cleanouts?
That's an engineering question.
Yeah, good question, Paul. I think if we set the lateral cleanouts at the elevation of the existing ground and not the excavated trench, we will be fine.
Yeah, this is a tough situation.
Maybe what we do is we hold the 17 until he has done all the restoration work on what he can do today, and then release those funds. Then we'll have the maintenance bond for the lawn restoration. Maybe that's a reasonable path forward.
And I'm okay with even considering, can we do it conditionally, so you don't have to wait till next month to release it, if he were to get the work done between the, if he gets that work done before the next meeting, what do we meet in January 5th, right? January 3rd?
Yeah.
So why don't we just hold off until January 3rd?
Happy to do it.
We good with that component?
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
All right, let's hold off to January 3rd, tell them why. And then I do think the maintenance bond and whatever the township would have to do with the road crew could take care of dirt and seed and stuff like that.
Perfect.
Just out of curiosity, is that development owned by PennDOT, or are they owned by the township, or?
Township. There are roads.
And there are roads. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna skip that for now. And we'll move on to the rest of this here.
Yeah, so, and again, on that same topic, Chris and I have both been in touch very regularly with our contacts at Allen Myers. Allen Myers is the low bidding contractor. We awarded the repair and repaving of all the roads in Fair Hills. I think like many contractors this year, Allen Myers was struggling with equipment, manpower, and just supply chain delays, so that their production was well below what they would have in a normal year. And to your point, I think Lower Providence and Talmadge are both in very similar boats with Allen Myers. So what we have talked about is allowing them to be here next spring with no need to rebid. We'll hold the existing contract, existing pricing, and allow them to come in the spring and finish up the work. They will be here this week to repair any of those open areas between handicap ramps and the edge of paving, winterize the manholes, and just make sure that it's in good shape. They will be repairing some of those real damaged areas before winter. So we'll get as much of that done as long as we can, so long as the weather holds out. But we do think it is in our best interest, especially for our wearing course, to wait until temperatures are appropriate. And that also gives us a couple extra months of time to allow any trench settlement that may occur to occur, so that when we put our final wearing course down, we're getting the best job as possible. And so with your approval, I have drafted a letter to Allen Myers extending their contract deadline until April 30th, and ask them to get that done in the spring.
Are you confident that they'll hold the bid?
They have to.
I'm just not confident they'll do the work by April 30th. That's the biggest issue. I mean,
They probably don't know themselves.
That's a township road, and if you had any plow company that you hired to go through that neighborhood right now, they'd probably be billing you for the broken plows. I mean, since the work has been done on that road, it is nothing but potholes. It is, the whole entire loop is a pothole, and it's.
I absolutely agree with you.
So I hope when they come in, they're fixing this before you get plows on there, like the potholes. I really hope they actually do it, or else it's gonna be bigger issues.
Well, so.
Agreed. Yeah.
Allen Myers can come in and fix the potholes, they can fix the ramp cutouts, which were intentional, they'll remove all the cones and all the other walking hazards, so people walking the dog don't break their ankle, and get it just stabilized for the winter.
Correct.
And then hopefully be back by April 30th.
Correct.
I can tell you is, we spent $1 million here, and I wouldn't want to hold a gun to their head and force them to do it in a situation where it won't hold up because the weather wasn't ideal for it. My feeling would be that as painful as it is, if I lived on that block, I'd want it done right and not have to worry about it breaking up in 10 years, 5 years.
I agree with that because it hasn't been done ever. This is the first time it's ever been done.
I know, and I gotta tell you, this board is extraordinarily sympathetic of the condition of that road. It was delayed because of sewer challenges. You can't fix the road, then rip it up for the sewer. We've made a significant improvement, investment there, and it kills us that it's not done. Honestly,
It's turned over to all kids. It's great to see a neighborhood like that. I've been there 10 years now. The turnover of ratio of seeing, biggest thing is there's 18 elementary kids that get on at the first entrance at Fort Bevan and Church Road. And every day, it's a hazard for them to walk out in that street. The bus actually picks the kids up in the middle of the street because of that hazard. That should have been something, when they were done a month ago, there should have been no delay. That's something that should have been done right away, especially on the handicap ramp. So these kids have a place to walk down and walk on that bus.
when can they get out and do this pothole and ramp? Patches?
This week.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
All right, what we need to do is make sure we send a communication out to all the residents so that they know what we're doing and why. I can't be more apologetic. We have no control over that, and I just rather see it done right than need an artificial timeline. And I hate it. I mean, we all stuck our necks out to start a project that we knew was gonna be difficult, given the number of homes impacted. We was hoping it would be done sooner, and it's just beyond our control. And all I can say is, we're empathetic as possible, but I'd rather see it done right.
Well, Saturday's supposed to be in the mid-60s, tell them to get out there.
It's a 2-week paving project. Saturday won't do it for them. So you can't get started and have the weather change. It's honestly, as horrible as it sounds, waiting till the spring is absolutely the best thing to do it right. Make sure we get solid communication to the residents.
There's already a drafted letter that will be going out in the mail by tomorrow afternoon, and everyone will get a copy of that. I will also be posting this information on our Facebook page, the Facebook group that the neighborhood has, as well as on our website. So communication will be out there first thing tomorrow.
Call me with feedback that you're getting.
I will.
All right. Question about the paving?
About the whole project, yes.
Sure.
2019 Glendale. I don't know how this whole project came up. I'm assuming that we never had really any say in anything that was going to go on with all of this. But they came in, they took out a ton of our trees. They have, honestly, the neighborhood is ugly now. There's no trees anywhere. And I'm guessing that there's no room in any of the budgets, these open space budgets and anything else, to try to replace any of what got taken. We're looking at higher, HVAC bills and stuff now because we've lost huge shade trees. We've lost all the buffer from the trees from the wind and all that kind of stuff. And it's also just ugly. And now, of course, we've also had to deal with all of this for the past year that we've been dealing with all of this. Is there any plan anywhere to try to do anything to remediate what has happened to the neighborhood? Unfortunately, Mr. Williams is not the only one who feels like, I've been here 25 years. We've always felt like the second-class citizens of this township.
I hear you loud and clear. I can only say the project started because it kept backing up. The road needs to be replaced, but there were sewer problems. Then we inspect the sewer, and there was root infiltration from the trees that we had to remove. You couldn't put them back because that's where the pipes were. So it became this domino effect of, we can't do this until we do all the things that you don't see. We had to coordinate with PICO, which doesn't know us anything. And we got them to change schedules to kind of coordinate with what we were doing with the sewer. This is $1 million project on our dime, not counting what PICO put into it. We want it done right. And you're right, we take our turns through the community on where the investment goes, and it's your turn. When we did the sidewalks are the residents' responsibility. We went beyond the sidewalk damage of trees to repair sidewalks that were damaged in the proximity.
That's a disaster, though. Nick, you've walked around our neighborhood. That company, all they did was hire a landscape company to replace sidewalks that still go like this.
Well, here's what I can say about any of that stuff.
That's not PICO, that's on AJ. All right, that's both, I think, actually.
No, PICO's contractor was a landscaper. AJ George did not use a landscape company for the restoration.
So do we have any say with PICO, Chris, the fact that
I can speak with PICO, but I don't have, just like these cell phone things we talk about, PICO is governed by the Pennsylvania Utility Commission, not Skippack Township. I can speak to my municipal contact to try to, as I've been doing throughout their project, to express everyone's concerns. Ultimately, I can't tell PICO to do
The
so.
landscape company actually came out and said they laid this concrete in wrong days and temperatures. And
Unfortunately,
but they don't come back and fix it.
I don't have any enforcement ability over PICO.
I understand. But they come in the neighborhood and don't, part of my French, they just don't give a crap. They don't give a-
Unfortunately, I don't have any enforcement. I can just talk with our PICO contact who I have, and I have a very good relationship with her, and try to get it addressed, but ultimately I can't force it.
Can I make a request that you have them come out and meet the neighborhood possibly, besides the crew they send out?
I will talk with my contact tomorrow and see if that's something that she can set up to do.
Don't hold your breath, but we can say
I
yes,
understand.
right? Now, but going back to your point, throughout the project, we tried to be very considerate of the pain you were in to try to give a little extra. So as far as the trees go, I'm open-minded to having that conversation come this spring. Let's get the road paved. Let's look at what trees were removed. Let's
I know
look at,
there's more trees slated to come down in the spring.
are there?
Yeah.
There are a couple that need to come down so we can fix township-owned sidewalk, yes.
And on the other side of that is the catchwater basin, and trees could be put there. Trees could be put where they were if you picked the right trees. The city has them, Phoenixville has them, Collegeville has them. If you pick the right trees, you can put trees between the sidewalk, and then you just have to pick the right ones.
I'm open to revisiting this this spring.
It was the wrong thing to go between the sidewalk and a curb.
The trees we got rid of had to be removed, but I am open to revisiting in the spring, see what makes sense for locations that lost a tree, not somebody who wants extra landscaping. If somebody lost a tree, let's go back and look
I
at it.
lost a tree, and
I'm open to having that conversation.
Get cooked by the sun.
Let's get the road done.
I honestly would have kept the road. It's that bad through the neighborhood. You can't walk through the neighborhood now. It's nothing but sun everywhere. It's awful.
You wouldn't want to keep that.
I had no
drove on
sewer
it.
problems, and I had no problem with the road.
Well, there were 80 people that had a problem with the sewer, so unfortunately.
No, mine was one of the laterals that got fixed. It was never actually a problem, so I don't know how those.
That's why a tree grew so well.
It did. It was beautiful.
All right, enough said. Let's revisit it after the paving.
Okay.
All right, so let's get that communication now, make sure the residents know, let me know what the feedback is, all right? All right, anything else?
Yeah, well, just let me, stormwater is one of my favorite topics, and it's been a while since I've talked stormwater with the board. Just recall that EPA down to DEP has gone throughout the state and categorized all the water courses and defining whether they've been impaired or not. And so most all of the streams in Montgomery County are impaired. The Wissahickon Creek is impaired, the Pennypack Creek is impaired, the Swamp Creek, parts are not, some of it is. Skippack Creek, Perkins Creek, all impaired waterways. In some of these streams, EPA has done some calculations and reporting and established a total maximum daily loading, a TMDL plan for individual water courses, the Skippack Creek being one. And what this TMDL says is that the Skippack Creek can handle only so much sediment load and remain healthy. And it's carrying a much higher sediment load today than it can healthily support. So townships, you've got to reduce the sediment load in the creek, and that's an obligation under your stormwater permit. So what we did a couple of years back is that we got together and held hands with the municipalities that are also in our watershed. And we've sat closely with Lower Providence, Skippack, Worcester, Talmenton, Hatfield, and working with Upper Gwinnett and Lansdale, as well as Lower South. We've put together this little consortium of communities. We've put together a plan of projects that we can do to address the sediment load in the creek. And we sent it to DEP. And we've been back and forth with this plan with DEP, but we've come to the point where they kind of think our plan's good. We've got a number of projects that we would be obligated to do, again, with this little consortium of communities. And so what we're doing now is circling back with all of our townships, talking about what this plan says, and also putting together an agreement that would formally bind those municipalities that want to participate as part of our little watershed group. As watershed planners, we know that water doesn't understand a township boundary between Talmenson and Skippack, or Skippack and Lower Providence. And so working together on a watershed basis is going to be really helpful. Ryan from Mountain Conservancy has been part of this process. The County Planning Commission has been part of the process with us. PennDOT has participated. So we've got a pretty good group of folks together. And so just giving you a heads up that we've got kind of the verbal nod on our TMDL plan, and we'll be back in a month or so with this agreement for your consideration. We'll be bringing that to all the townships to sign, and with that agreement signed, the plan in place, we can then formally present our TMDL plan to DEP for approval. So that's kind of where we are, and I just thought I would bring that up.
Are you gonna ask us for money at that time? or-
Yes.
Got a swag on what that might be?
I remember it well.
Yeah.
Or if you want to reserve the right to have the numbers
bigger
right.
picture is that we really believe that there is money out there to fund some of this through grants.
Gotcha.
And we really believe that working as a consortium, that we will be ranked much higher for these grant applications than other towns that might be going it alone. So with that as the caveat, we're looking at about $1 million, get plus or minus. The project's got to be designed, it's got to be bid, but our share is in that $1 million range.
There goes our savings. All right, tell you what.
It's over a 10-year period, so it's not like all out in one fell swoop. But as projects become realities, we gotta fund them.
How long will it take you to have a better feel for what kind of grant money we might have toward that?
There are a number of programs. One of the benefits, if there is any benefits from COVID, is that we get some, what is that, the American Recovery Act program. So there's some money there that we get. How we use that money is, I guess up for debate or, conversation anyway. So there's some money we're getting already anyway. But, again, there's PennVest, there's a number of programs out there with these grant funds available. So.
All right, thanks, Tim.
I
Looking
have
forward to an update.
I have a quick question on the sediment levels. Is the township only responsible for Skippack Creek within the township boundaries? Or is it responsible?
Dave, that's a good question.
As
So
far,
the way the
let me
TMDL is
finish.
written-
As far as tributaries that may be feeding into it downstream from the township.
Yeah, the way the TMDL was written by the EPA, each township has an allocation of sediment that's been assigned to each community. So Skippack, if you I'll send you a copy of the TMDL report. It shows that Skippack has 350 cubic pounds per year of sediment that we are allowed, and every Talmenson has its allocation, Lower Southwood has its allocation. And it really is the watershed that's contributory to the stream. But we know that Franconia Township, stormwater leaving Franconia is carrying sediment down through Skippack. And so it really is part of one big watershed. It is not necessarily Skippack only. But we have an allocation that is defined for Skippack in the TMDL.
Thank you.
Looking forward to the update, Tim. Barry, anything for you?
Nothing further that hasn't been discussed.
Okay. Mr. Zadlow?
Nothing, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Back to you, Chris.
I have 4 things on my agenda tonight. The first 2 are just authorizing advertisement of meetings. The first is your Board of Supervisors reorganization meeting for Monday, January 3rd, 2022 at 7:30 p.m. here at the Township Building. The next is the elected Board of Auditors reorganization meeting, which will be the following day at 4:30 p.m. here at the Township Building. The next is a special event permit. This is an annual one. It's the $1 Million Bike Ride. It's June 11th of 2022. They were on the ball this year, got it in early. And then the last is Resolution 2021-18, which is the review and adoption of the 2022 budget.
Gotcha.
That's all I have.
All right, let's do the first 2 together. I'll make a motion to authorize the advertisement of the Board of Supervisors organization meeting, as well as the authorization to advertise the elected Board of Auditors organization meeting for January 3rd and January 4th. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. All right, special event permit. Do I have a motion for the Orphan Disease Center main bike ride? I'll make a motion.
Second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. I'll make the motion to pass resolution 2021-18, the adoption of the 2022 budget. Do I have a second? Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. All right, old business. Is that you, Chris?
Yes, so if you recall, at the end of last month's meeting, we had Mr. Fuller from Keystone Lighting Systems come and give a presentation to the board regarding the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission's Regional Streetlight Procurement Program, where we would replace our existing streetlights in the township to LED lights. So what tonight is considering a resolution to participate in phase 2 of that program, which is just the design and auditing phase, where they literally go and physically verify exactly what lights we have, what kind, where they are. They create a mapping so they can add into our existing mapping system here exactly what we have, where they are, what they look like. So that would be to design the program to then decide whether you want to move forward with actual construction and replacement of our lights in phase 3. Phase 4 is just maintenance and maintaining the existing, or the new lights that they install in phase 3. So this would be just getting the township into phase 2, which would run us a little over $3,000 total to get all that work done, that auditing and mapping work done, and design work, I'm sorry. And decide at that point, based on that design, what the costs would the actual cost would be for the replacement in phase 3.
And this is do or die here. If we don't opt in tonight, we're out of the program because they're starting phase 2.
Correct. So this is the third round of this program. They've done it 2 other times with 3 or 4 dozen municipalities throughout the Philadelphia region. This is phase 3, and what they're saying at this point, because there's been so few municipalities now interested through this program or this round, this is most likely the last round of this program that they're going to do. So if we don't decide to participate now, they're going to get started with their phase 2 work in the beginning of January. So if we don't decide to participate, then we would be on our own to do this in the future.
Well, I gotta tell you, after that presentation, I went downtown, so a bunch of lights are out. Then I went downtown a couple days later, so the road crew out there changed a bunch of lights. And then I asked Chris how many times we gotta do that a year, and he said quite frequently, and they're $45 a piece. Phase 2 is a $3,000 investment, and they're going to give us a map of our light grid, which we don't have. It's worth that in itself. And from there, we'll know exactly how much it would cost and how many years to recoup and go environmentally friendly. So with that said, I kind of flipped my view of this, and I am going to make the motion. Let me read it. I'll make the motion to participate in the DVRPC Regional Streetlight Procurement Program, Phase 2. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Cut them a check.
Well, no, we'll get billed, so it's not a flat up front cost. They will bill you at 2 parts, basically when they're halfway done and then when they're done phase 2.
It'll be very interesting to see what they come back with. All right, new business. What do you got for us?
New business, the first would be the land development, preliminary final land development for the previously discussed townhome community on Skippack Pike. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Clement, who is still with us.
I'm still here. So you had previously authorized conditional use for this development. There was also previously a land development approval, a preliminary and final land development approval for the apartment building, 18 units, as we discussed in the conditional use here. Mr. Marino is here this evening asking for preliminary and final land development approval for the new proposal, which is the 8-unit townhome project, which we discussed in detail earlier. I really don't think there's any need to go into further detail about it. Conditions of approval would be, of course, compliance with the conditional use decision and order, and also with the township review letters. There are just a few waivers that have been requested, 2 in particular, from the subdivision and land is from section 169-33A7, which requires improving streets and street frontages along the track. The applicant has asked to allow for some frontage improvements to be done to the satisfaction of the township engineer, but not the entirety of the track, or not the entirety of improvements that could be required. Same with section 169-33B2, which would require the dedication of right-of-way, and then also paving and curbing. In that particular area, the dedication of right-of-way is something that the township engineer has recommended, but the actual improvements don't make sense in that particular location at this time. So those two waivers were previously granted with the previous approval. The recommendation is to grant those waivers again and allow for the 8-unit townhome project to be constructed as opposed to the 18-unit apartment complex.
Thank you, Joe. All right, I will make the motion to grant the preliminary and final land development approval for the 8-unit townhome development at 4446 Skippack Pike in accordance with the conditions as set forward. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Motion passes, Joe.
Paul, just real quick. Joe, real fast, should they do a separate motion for the waivers, or is the approval cover that as well?
The resolution covers the waivers. Thanks, Chris.
All right, just making sure. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next, Chris. This is for the fee schedule? No, this is, the first one is ordinance.
The ordinance itself.
All right, this is the ordinance we have to pass for the small wireless. Do I have a motion to pass ordinance 358, small wireless communication facilities, as stipulated?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. And the fee, is there a resolution for the fee schedule, or are we?
Yes, it's resolution 2021-21.
Gotcha. And so you know, what we have in here is the highest fees allowed by law. Whatever they happen to be is what they are. With that said, I'll make a motion to pass resolution 2021-21 for the establishing the fees and charges for small wireless communication facilities. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor? Aye. Got anything else, Chris?
Just one additional thing.
Just one additional thing. We say goodbye tonight to a supervisor who spent the last 18 years serving her community. Janine's last meeting.
I thought I got away with
You didn't go with anything. And so I want to congratulate 18 years, serving your community with all the rights, privileges, and headaches that go along with that is a phenomenal accomplishment. Thank you so much. And there's a resolution recognizing Janine Mishner for her 18 years of service on the Board of Supervisors, Township Board of Supervisors. Whereas Janine Mishner has served on the Skippack Township Board of Supervisors for 18 years, and whereas Janine Mishner has distinguished herself as an honest, fair, dedicated member of the Skippack Township Board of Supervisors, and whereas through her 18 years serving the citizens of Skippack Township, Janine Mishner has provided wisdom, leadership, which has contributed to the tremendous growth of Skippack Township. And now, therefore, let it be resolved that the Skippack Township Board of Supervisors does hereby commend and express its sincere gratitude and appreciation to Janine Mishner for her distinguished service to the Skippack Township Board of Supervisors and the Skippack Township community. Thank you so much.
No, it's just been a real pleasure, and I grew up here. My parents bought a farmhouse in '65, and was a little hesitant to get involved with this because I wanted everything to just kind of stay the way it was back then. But it's been a wonderful time with some really truly dedicated people, and the place won't run the way it does without our executive staff here. So thank you guys for making my job really easy. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Janine. And with that, the meeting's adjourned. Here you go.
Thanks.